Hey, this is Mike, lead developer of TwinSync Studio at Graphel Technologies. So I'm going to be installing TwinSync Studio and giving you a full in-depth workflow demo of TwinSync Studio 1.0 today. Okay, so I've already downloaded the installer over here, so we're just going to open that up. And there we go, fancy installer animation. Okay, so this is the 1.0 version. So there's like an end user license agreement, privacy policy, terms and conditions. I'm going to agree and continue. I'm going to put in my access key and hit submit, and then as long as that's valid, it's going to start up. Okay, cool. So this is the main menu. So this is going to be a full tour. So I'm going to be giving like an in-depth talking about everything and putting hopefully like a timeline in the video. So that way you can skip and skim ahead, but this is the main menu. So TwinSync Studio is sort of a pipeline for input data, currently really just Synchro and iTwin data, to import it into Unreal with as much customization as you can do, and also preserving the like the animation from Synchro data specifically. So we have our recent projects that we can get to here. We have some links here, like going straight to the TwinSync Studio manual, which can be useful if you have some questions before you contact support or something. And then we also have here where we can actually open a local file that you might have gotten through something like the Synchro 3D.bim export, or you can download it and log into your Bentley account to look at your other iTwins. You can also log out of, and then if you look at those iTwins, then you download them. And you can always get back to this main menu by hitting view and going to main menu. So if I just hit download as a demo, you'd have to sign in, but I can go and look at my iTwins. I think I have, no, it looks like I don't have the Metro Station demo anymore. That would have been a good one to show for properties, but I guess I'll maybe do that in a separate video. So anyway, I'm gonna navigate back to the main menu using the view menu, and we're just gonna open this recent one that I have, which is just the Synchro training data because it has animation data. Okay, so I'm gonna just give a brief tour. So this is the viewport of our model. It has, if you have an animation, which I'm sure most people have, then you have this schedule widget here, which lets you go through and see everything that changed. Probably should have zoomed in there. Yeah, so you can play, you can change the speed over here. And you can also see the end date and the start date of your schedule as it came into the iTwin from sources like Synchro. You have some navigation tools here. You can fit the view, or you can switch from the select mode to just panning or just orbiting. I'm going to go back to select because I like to use the middle mouse button. And there's a couple other things here if you want more advanced view stuff. And then there's some like built-in iTwin measurement stuff, which we don't care about. What we care about are these two, which come with this specific TwinSync Studio, and that is the quick export, which is going to be the dominant thing that I expect people to use. Although we will talk about some advanced stuff that is currently in like the beta phase. Which will be available in TwinSync Studio 1.0 and will be really useful if you're doing material mapping stuff and you especially want to look at some of the properties that we have here, which we'll take a look at in a second. And then the other one is this graphical complexity visualization, which we can talk about in a second as well. But before we talk about that, let's just finish up looking at this tree view here. So we have all the models here, such as these are basically the things that were like synchronized into Synchro or imported into it. Or into iTwin. There's multiple stages that it could have entered at. But if, for example, I close this landscaping model, then it's going to, or I made it invisible, visibility being something that will become important, we will no longer see that. And you can also control visibility. You'll get new buttons here for visibility. So we can actually undo any changes by clicking that. You can just hover over it for it to tell you what it is. But yeah, we were able to, in the model tree here, see what other, or what subset of landscaping there is, and make things invisible, and then go back using this. And then we can also check out the categories tree, which is not super useful in this model. This model is really old, so it's like old Synchro training data was like probably like a really long time ago synchronized from Synchro to iTwin, so it doesn't have a lot of data, unfortunately, which we'll still be able to use it here. I'll show that, but typical models should have a lot more data for you to like in the iTwin for you to manipulate or inspect. You may not need that, especially for the quick export, but when we talk about the alpha scripting based export, then we can, or alpha, beta, I haven't decided yet, then it might be useful. Okay, so we got our categories, which in this case isn't very great. It's just everything. We have our models, which was a lot more useful. And now let's take a look at this graphical complex visualization. So basically, this is just going to tell you what is going to be really heavy in Unreal, like how many triangles it's going to take. I didn't even sort of show that if you hover over something, it'll actually tell you the amount of triangles, how dense it is, like geometrically. Like if it's a large thing that has a lot of triangles, then it might be like heavy. But if it's a small thing that has a lot of triangles, then it's going to be really heavy. So it's going to look red in this view. So I'm just going to click on this already. We already see we have some green things, which are just big and don't have that many triangles. And then we have things that are more yellow or even smaller and more orangey. And we're even going to have some red things. If we go to the geometry analyzer, we actually have a sorted list of all of the elements in this model with their density and the ability to find or select them. So I'm just going to select some guy somewhere. And then let's just hit find so we can actually zoom to it. Okay, so this is the piece. And we can hover over it. We can actually see already down here the amount of triangles and stuff. There will probably be in the future more information here as well. There's also sort of the problem that geometric parts, which is the way that iTwin allows you to have multiple sort of instances of a mesh within one element, those kind of screw things up because we can't select things in multiple parts. But when things get put into Unreal, they actually come out as separate parts, like the elements get split up into their parts. So that's a little bit complicated, but going to try to make it, for the most part, it's not that bad. Just keep in mind that if there's multiple parts, then the triangles might not exactly be fully representative. So kind of unfortunate situation, but we'll work on that in the future. Okay, so we can definitely see that these pipes are just two things. So A, these pipes are pretty dense, and B, we don't actually see them because they're inside a wall. So even if you were deciding to go inside your model, probably don't want to carry those over into Unreal unless you really, at least in my case, if I'm just looking from the outside for my visualization. So what I'm going to do is, so I've already selected it. I think I forgot to show the properties panel, so we can look at that right now. I have two things selected. That's why we have varies here. So I'm going to actually deselect everything. That's, I think, nope, that's this guy. Or nope, this one. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to select just that one guy. And now we see all of our properties here. Like I said, this model doesn't have a lot of properties because it's really old, but it does have this user label which says pipes, which is sort of what we want. The other thing that it has the ability to navigate up in the hierarchy of that model tree that we saw and select more things. So right now it's so tiny we can't even see it from here. So I'm going to hit navigate up, and all of a sudden it's going to be selecting a lot more pipe stuff. And in fact, it now shows standard, whatever that is. And I'm going to go up again. Got more pipes. I'm going to go up all the way as far as I can until we get to this plumbing file that was probably put inside the Synchro project. And I'm just going to assume that all this plumbing stuff we don't want to show. So the easiest way to do that in TwinSync Studio is we're just going to make it invisible, because there are ways to not export invisible geometry. So all I got to do is hide it, and I can do that, I think, here. Yeah, hide elements. Okay, so those are hidden. So now we don't have to see those. And you can do that with whatever you want, honestly. Like you could make things invisible here. I think, yeah, we just turned it off here, and also just by using the navigation that we did in the properties panel. So we got rid of that. You can, hide whatever you want, honestly. Okay, so that's cool. We've hidden something, and let's now move on to the quick export, which is what I think most people are going to use. And then we'll talk about some material mapping stuff. So if I go to here, the quick export, really all you need to worry about are these two for the most part. Everything else is kind of like advanced stuff. So just the defaults are pretty good, except for maybe this filter by viewport visibility, which maybe I should have made true by default, but doesn't matter. I'm going to turn it on because that means that the visibility change I just made is now going to be filtered from the export. So those pipes that we made invisible aren't going to move into Unreal at all. Which makes our Datasmith file smaller and makes things easier, and if you need to filter stuff, it's a great way to do it. The other thing that we have to be aware of is these merging strategies. So in general, I would really only, so because this is like sort of an advanced menu, you're allowed to do the other ones, but I would only do the ones that have an instance in them, because the point is it's saying that it merges anything that doesn't have multiple instances. So like I said, you can have, or iTwin can have within one element multiple meshes that are all sort of the same part, it's like the same mesh, but there are multiple instances of it, multiple placements of that part. That can be within one element. It could be across elements, one part or mesh. So we're going to say that we're going to merge, because this is our cluster merging strategy, we're going to merge any mesh that is not instanced within an element. So if an element is made out of like 5 different meshes, then we're going to, as long as they are unique and they aren't placed anywhere else, we're going to merge them. So the element becomes one actor in Unreal, except for any instances inside of it, that's going to be like a child actor. Just so that way, that is just the most efficient way to do things in Unreal, because you will have less geometry. Like if you had 15 trees that all have like 10,000 vertices, I think if I go back, we can actually see these guys have a pretty high vertex count. Yeah, 15,000. So if you have 100 of these guys, then what do you have? Like 1 million, 1.5 million triangles? Not fun for just trees. So if you have like 10 of these, which we have 8 here, so that's enough. We definitely want those to be instanced, so that way Unreal and the GPU aren't eating unnecessary triangles. So back to that menu, we've got our filter by viewport still on. Uninstanced meshes within each element is good. You can also merge any mesh that is not instanced, which is pretty performant. And that's really the less meshes you have, as long as they're not doing that duplication that causes extra vertices I just talked about, that's going to give you the best performance because it's less draw calls for Unreal Engine. So this is a pretty good option. There's also this one, which is it merges within an animation batch. And I guess I didn't really explain, but clustering doesn't really work if you have something that's moving around that has like a 3D path or transform animation. So it actually doesn't let you cluster across transform animation boundaries. So if something moves, then you can, or if like 10 things are moving together, like they're part of the same animation batch, then that is the maximum that you can cluster. You can't cluster anything into that because then it would start moving with it, and that'd be weird. So yeah, there's that restriction, but for the most part, this stuff's pretty just merge it however you want. And this one's just merges more things, but not as many as merging everything together, which can be a bit too much if you want to customize some of the meshes. Okay, but yeah, so the default was pretty good, like I said, but if you want maximum performance, you can try all uninstance meshes. There's just less mesh customizability, and this one's also pretty good. Just merges them into groups based on how they move or how they turn visible and etc. The animations and like appearance profiles and 3D paths in Synchro. Okay, but I'm going to keep it as the default. And at this point, you just hit export. So I call this quick export, even though it took a while to explain this, because you just mostly hit export. You can hit this button if you want. You can change the merging strategies that I just described. And by the way, the merging strategies are also described in the manual that there was a link for on the main menu. So you can read that too if you want a refresher, if you want to skim what I was saying. If you're here, then maybe you already heard what I was saying. But if you want to remember, go look at that. So you just hit export, and that's it for most people. So at that point, what you would want to do is you'd want to go and let's set up our Unreal project. Let me double check actually that I don't have the plugin. So I haven't opened it yet. You will have to restart once you do this step of installing the plugin. But basically, I'm going to go find my project, and I'm going to open it with this install plugin dropdown that I just did. So plugin install, you find your .u project file, because that's what it's looking for. And then you hit that, and then it tells me that it installed the plugin. So what that did was it added that plugins folder that I just deleted. And that brings you the TwinSync Studio Unreal Engine plugin, which is going to drive the animations and has like some necessary logic and material stuff to make your export look good and work in Unreal. Okay, so we got that. That is in the graphical scripting interface window, by the way. Maybe I'll move that out in the future. But right now you install the plugin and use that quick export. Okay, so now with that said, let me open Unreal. I will give a quick note that the plugin binaries that ship with TwinSync Studio only work out of the box for Unreal Engine 5.5. So if you are using a different version of Unreal Engine, you will need to install the Visual Studio build tools. So that way when Unreal prompts you, hey, would you like to rebuild this out of like wrong version plugin, you'll be able to say yes, and then just wait like, I don't know, what is it, 20 seconds, and then it'll be done. And then you'll never have to wait for that again within that version of Unreal Engine. So it works with the plugin compiles, and it actually comes with the source code for you if you want to look at it. And it will drive the animation, and it will work in pretty much any Unreal Engine version. of 5.0 or later. So just check it out, and you can use that to, you will need Visual Studio anyway to repackage if you're packaging for a final platform, your Unreal Engine project. Like if you're not just recording things in the editor. Okay, so I did not do an export because I wanted to show the alpha features. But the next step is, we have, I guess I didn't really show it, but this is my base Unreal Engine project that I created using the architecture template. And that's important because that means that if we go into the plugins, we're going to have sorry, it's an edit, isn't it? We're going to have the Datasmith plugins. So you would have to enable these yourself if you didn't do this. The Datasmith content and stuff like Datasmith importer, you need to enable those. I also have, we've installed our Sync Studio plugin. So just check that, that's good. And then the other thing that we need is I want to use some of the starter content materials. You maybe have your own, but that's what we're gonna do with this advanced visual scripting alpha, which will be in 1.0. Just, there's some bumps, which is why it's still really considered alpha. But if I go to add feature content pack, you just wanna make sure you have this, well, in my case, I wanna make sure I have the starter content. You just wanna make sure you have your material. I'm just gonna hit add to project. I already did that before, honestly, so it's over here. And then I have the materials right here. Great, so now let's use those in the visual scripting to do material mapping before we even get into Unreal. And that way we have full access to all of the iTwin data and Synchro data, basically. Whatever is synchronized into the iTwin, which is Synchro in this case. Here's our default script. So basically, if you're familiar with Unreal Engine, you probably know about blueprints, the visual scripting language there. This is a sort of similar thing. I'm not going to go full in depth about Graphel, but you can just think of it as like being similar to blueprints, but it runs into Sync Studio. And what it does is it takes these meshes and instances that we were talking about, and it processes each one and makes decisions of what to do with each one. So basically you're given, and you get to decide. So you could just do the quick export, or you could do this for several reasons. So right now, we're basically saying, given it's called process instance is the name of this function. You can add new functions if you want. If you want to like repeat something a lot. But you're given an element ID, all these parameters here, the geometry sources, which is basically the part ID. So like if you have one element, but it has like 5 placements of something inside of it, then you'd have the same element, the same geometry source ID, but different origin and rotations placed within that one element. And you'd basically, this function that you're writing here would get run 5 times, once for each instance that was placed, and then also for the elements non-part geometry and stuff like that. So basically every mesh in the scene is going to have this called on it. And it has access to this data about the mesh, like what animation is it a part of, what's the origin rotation, what's the part ID if there is one, and what's the element ID. So in our case, what we care about is, well, let me get out of this geometry complexity view. I'm going to reset the viewport. What we're going to look at is a property here that I've found, which is useful. Like I said, there will be better properties in other models. But in our case, we just have this user label. That's about it. But if we go up in the hierarchy here, we can see that this floor actually is part of the grass user label parent. Or it's a parent element that has a user label. If we click on this grass and go up, we also see that it's also part of grass. There's some other grassy regions. Those ones seem to be under concrete or something, which is kind of funny. But grass 7 and grass 6 seem to be something that we could target for doing some material mapping with this visual scripting. So what I'm going to do is I want to, like we saw, we have to go up one parent from the element. So we're going to go up one parent from the element. I'm going to, it's like Unreal Engine. There's a quick guide if you go to the help and the Graphel guide. It'll say some stuff about how to use things, but I'm going to click and drag out from my element ID and release, and that's going to bring up the add node menu. And now you can also right click to get the add node menu, but it'll have everything. It won't have just things that are relevant to what you're looking at. But I want the smaller one, so I'm going to go to the iTwin section, and I'm going to grab the parent function. And we're going to grab the parent of the element we're currently inspecting, and then we're going to drag that, and we're going to grab that parent element's user label. Okay, great. So now we have the user label, and we want to map it to a grass material that we're going to want in Unreal. This cluster ID also tells us which cluster we want to merge into. You can sort of choose whatever you want. Any number can be used as a cluster ID, and element IDs luckily are numbers. So I'm actually going to drag out from here, go to get parameters and do get element ID. and we're going to say that we're going to use the element ID to do clustering. So that's sort of like what we saw earlier, where I did we chose the merging strategy based within an element. So I'm going to delete this cluster node that we don't need anymore. One other thing that I think I didn't fully describe the things that we can do with each element that we're processing is we can assign the material for that element. If it's empty, it just gets the default animated material. Or we could ignore this mesh that we're looking at, or instance of a mesh. So we can ignore this instance, meaning just don't place it, just don't put it in the Datasmith file. And here we can even go ahead and say which output file we want. Like if we want multiple, sorry, I realized I probably should have zoomed in here. Doing this too far. If we want if we want to send things to different Datasmith files, like say, like, you know, send the plumbing model to different Datasmith files, you can actually do that. But I don't think that's a big, or we don't care about that right now for sure. So let's just move on to figuring out how we're going to map the materials. So the easiest way to map a lot of materials, I've created a special node for people, is map by table. So I'm actually going to Control left click to get rid of this link because it just linked to the first string you can find. I want to actually link the user label to be the key that we're searching for in the table. So this is where I'm going to introduce the table manager. So I already have a table I'm going to throw out here. I'm going to open it and I'm going to say, okay, so here's a new table. Sorry, I deleted one. I created a new table. I'm going to rename it to materials. And then I'm going to see, basically this is just like a spreadsheet. So I'm going to make this side a little bit, or this column a little bit bigger. What we want to do in this visual scripting interface, and there's an explanation here, is we want to basically say we're taking user label as a key. We want to say that if the user label has a part of like a keyword, so our keyword is going to be the first column. I'm going to say like grass. Remember we have grass 6 and grass 7 that we want to match on. If that keyword is contained in the user label, then we want to map to a certain material. So I'm going to right click here, and then I'm going to do select UE material. So this right click is sort of like the menu for accessing materials, accessing special values, placing special values more easily into the table. So in this case, we're going to get a material path by selecting a material directly, just way easier than having to figure out how Unreal does material paths ourselves. So if I go into our project, go into the content, find the starter content that we did earlier, go to the materials, and then look for the grass. Here's mground grass. Whoops. Okay, great. So it just placed in this material path for us, which has this fancy Unreal Engine path. But now that means that this visual script is going to, when it sees grass inside the user label, and we need to actually match part, otherwise it's going to be an exact match, in which case it's going to look for grass 6, grass 7, which we don't want. We want to look for just grass. We want to return that, or it will return that material. The only other thing we need to do is we need to type materials into the table here, because the table name, in the future that'll probably be a drop down, but for now you actually have to match the table name exactly yourself, not that hard. So that's just the name of the table that we made. Let me also make these not go through each other. So yeah, so now we're looking in the materials table for that user label. We're only matching, like doing a partial match, so it's okay if we just found grass, but not the entire grass 6, grass 7. And then lastly, if we haven't found anything in that table, then we're just going to return this, which could be another material path, but I'm just going to leave it as the default, which is the empty string, because that's going to give us our animated material that just uses the colors that are here. And then lastly, I actually take whatever we found, which we know is a material, and put it as the material name for this instance. Okay, now let's just do one more fun thing, which is I want to, like, let's say ignore something. So let's say, because there's this ignore thing here, what's a good candidate for this? You are, nah. I want to ignore something based on something. Oh yes, wait, no, I know what we need to do. What we need to do is we need to ignore those pipes that we had earlier that are still, shouldn't be visible, but let's just take a look. Whoops, if I go back to the geometry analyzer and find this guy. Oh, they're visible again, so I screwed something up, I guess. If I select it and then I navigate up, oh, I just cleared the view is what I did. If I keep navigating up, then eventually I'll have selected this entire thing. and I want to make sure that's invisible. So let me just hit this one, which is, nope, this one, yeah. All right, so I hid those elements, great. So this is now invisible. Could have done it through here, but I like the visual. Go back to our graphical scripting, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that, just like we had to check mark in the quick export, we have to opt into not exporting visible things. So we can actually check what's visible with a special note here. So if I drag out the element ID, actually let me do it this way. I'm just going to right click, and if I go to iTwin visible in Viewport, we can actually access the visibility of elements in the iTwin Viewport. So I'm going to connect these, and do we want to ignore it if it's visible in the viewport? No, we want to ignore it if it's not visible. We want to ignore invisible things. So I'm going to go to Boolean and do not. If you're not familiar with like Boolean and like that kind of stuff, I recommend learning more about Unreal Engine blueprints if you're going to be using this stuff. And then maybe you could come back and it should be easier to understand. But basically we're just saying if, we have an element ID, or we have the current element ID, it's this guy really, it's that parameter. We're checking, is it visible in the viewport? And it's not, make that the ignore. So ignore, you can read it backwards actually. Ignore this if it is not visible in the viewport, this element. So great, we are now going to ignore those pipes. Okay, great, so we have our setup. We're mapping over the materials table with those two columns. Obviously you could add more things, like I consider adding tree, but I think the light posts here have tree somehow in the user label. Yeah, street light. So I'm not going to use the wildcard match because otherwise it's going to, the tree is going to capture those as well. I could, for example, do Australian tree. You know what, let's just do that. Australian tree, and then let's match that to some material, which is definitely not going to work for the leaves, but let's just do wood oak or something. And that's going to match those nicely. And now we can do that. We can export. So basically, previously you hit export here. Now we're going to hit export by script. And this does the same thing as the other export would have done. I'm just going to call this grass 2. Just you give it a folder to create the Datasmith content into, and then you wait for it to finish. And then we'll be able to import it because we already moved the plugin. I think I totally opened Unreal and didn't show before that this is the architecture template that you want to use to get that Datasmith plugin that I already have in my project. Okay, I already finished exporting, great. So we've back to our empty that we've added the plugin to. Remember that you have to restart the entire Unreal Engine if you installed the plugin while it was running. Okay, I'm using 5.5. I'm going to go to this add content, go to the Datasmith import assets, which is you're only going to see if you have the plugin. I'm going to go to file import, and we're going to navigate to grass 2. And I'm just going to import this, and then we're going to wait for Unreal to bring everything in. I think I divided things by element, so we'll see how that went. Okay, all right, so here we are. So if there's one thing you notice already, it's that everything is white except for the grass. And the white, I think, I might change in the future because previously it was easier to see. Let me actually see, well, I'll do that another time. But basically, the material that everything gets, okay, we can see everything's placed by element, so it's all divided, which is sort of what we wanted, so that's good. Also, if you zoom in, you can see that transparency, which was not supported in previous versions of TwinSync Studio, is back. So these are all animated using the same material system, but they now support transparency by generating unique materials for everything based on what their transparency was. We can also see that the grass is looking good. I probably misspelled Australian or something because these are not. I'm actually curious if I misspelled it. I also am curious if these guys have the asset user data, if they have the user label on them, because I thought I added that a while ago. Oh my goodness, so much metadata. Nope, they just have the animation batch ID. Okay, well maybe I'll add that in the future. But yeah, because that way you could access at least the user label here. The problem is that's not the only useful, or really that's rarely the most useful data. So that's why you want to be able to access all of it without shoving all of it into Unreal, which is kind of unwieldy. The iTwin can have a lot of data. Okay, but yeah, so the Australian tree, I probably just misspelled that, and I apologize to Australians everywhere. Australian underscore tree. I don't know, that looks fine to me. Australian. Oh. Okay, yeah, well, I'm not going to fix that now, but you could re-export that and that would be better. Okay, so that's why that didn't match, but our grass matched, all the grass that we wanted. That's great. There's one problem, which is going to be animating this scene, this material I haven't prepared yet, so I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. And then I'll just do a really quick showcase of the Blueprint API, because when you import, you get this special guy, special actor called the Schedule Manager. Probably should have just typed manager, which you can find here inside the imported Datasmith object, and you can access the Blueprint API from this guy. So if I hold him and I go to the open level blueprint and I right click inside the level blueprint, it'll let you create a reference to whatever you have selected. So we can get back to this person in a sec, or to that element in a second. Yeah, okay, let's just fix this grass material, because if I hit play, things are already going to work. Let me actually delete this floor. Here's like a couple tricks. Whoa. Sorry, I'll delete you here. I don't know why that has to be in a sub menu, but at least it's one of my favorite things is deleting things. Even if it's not as, sometimes deleting things is not very fun in Unreal. Okay, so we deleted that, and then the other thing I wanted to do was go to the post-process volume and search for, I don't even remember what it's called, honestly. Exposure, yeah, I knew it was with an E. Okay, so we just want to change, I wanted the speed to be way higher, because otherwise it's going to take like 20 seconds to adjust to the light difference when the game starts. So we're going to play the level, and then now we should be able to see the scene, except we're going to see something bad, which is the grass is everywhere. Isn't that supposed to come in later, according to the playback that we see? It totally is, of course. Just let me show. Yeah, if you go here, that grass isn't supposed to show up yet. And that honestly makes sense if you know this, mostly because we've chosen a random material that has not been adjusted to work with the animation-driven, sorry, the material-driven animation. So if I navigate through that material by double-clicking on it, I just double-click through here and then double-click the parent to get to the parent material. We can see that we have the default material. We just need to add something to it to make it respect that material animation. So to do that, all we need to do is add a material function call, and then we want to use the schedule animation material, and we want to set custom outputs to true with a static bool. So we want to say we're going to use the custom inputs. The color is going to go like, we're basically going to put in our custom base color and take out the new color that we received from the animation. We're going to connect the opacity to the opacity mask, and we actually have to change the blend mode to masked, so that way it can be shown as, or made hidden by the animation. And then we're going to have a custom normal, although the normals aren't really used by this yet, but that doesn't matter. Maybe they will be in the future when there's some improvements, for example, to growth animations. Okay, so we set this up. I'm going to hit apply, and then we should now have this stuff. Well, I don't know why it turns white, I'll be honest, but it'll disappear. I think I was going to say earlier, but I'm not sure I did. Previously, there were vertex colors for this stuff. I don't know why it disappeared when I added the additional material layer. I'll try to restore it. But right now it's all white, and it's going to look fine when we play, because when we play, now that grass is going to be gone. Great. Except for the grass, which we can see is still active back there, because that stuff's already there. Okay, so let's, we can watch a little bit of the video. It doesn't really matter that much. Yeah, so this is the animation, obviously, and this is what we're looking for. Let's tweak the animation, and let's use the Blueprint API, and then we'll be done here. Because I think this has been long enough already. Okay, so we want to grab that schedule manager, and we're going to access them in the main blueprint that I had earlier. But first, let's take a look at some of the properties. So if I go to, I don't know why I'm not, or that probably should have activated earlier. If you go to the schedule manager, I think this will be set to true in the final release version. I'm using like a preview release version. We grab the schedule manager, and we can see basically it's based on the level sequence actor, the properties. So there's autoplay, which can turn on. There's a play rate. We can make it like play twice as fast. We can also make it loop. And this you don't really need to set because it's going to change as soon as it starts. That's what autoplay is for. But I just made it visible anyway because you can edit it in the blueprints, which is what we're about to do. So let's you can also there's some other things that you could just hover over for some explanations. but mostly these are the things you need to tweak. And you can also ignore the associated sequence. So in previous versions, you needed an associated level sequence. That is no longer the case because it was sort of a bottleneck. There are still some cases where you might want to use it, so it's still supported currently. That's what's known as the level sequence driven animation mode in the manual, but it's not the default. And once I'm able to make the new animation mode work with some things like certain uses of the movie render queue, then I will probably get rid of the associated sequence and just have a guide for using it in those niche cases. But yeah, besides that, you can ignore that. You don't need to add anything. There may be an animation folder inside your import, which you don't have to worry about. No more questions about why is there no animation folder when your sequence is empty. Don't worry about it. Let's just go to this event and let's use the Blueprint API. So I'm going to, you can just look for TwinSync Studio to get the list of everything that all the API calls that come with TwinSync Studio in the blueprints. So we're just going to pause after 5 seconds. So I'm going to do delay. So we're going to say after a 5-second delay, we're going to pause. And then we're going to go ahead and play again after 5 seconds. Whoops. Except we're going to do something interesting. We're going to set the date time. So first, let's actually grab this one again, and we're going to do set schedule date time. So like I said, you can just sort through these functions and read their documentation because they are all documented. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to actually choose what time to set it to. So we're really just going to pause in 5 seconds. Then let's say, well, to make it more visible, let's have another delay of, let's say 3 seconds this time. And then it's going to set the schedule date time and then keep playing from the new schedule date time. Okay, that looks good. So now we just need a schedule date time. So I'm going to make date time. So I'm just going to choose a year, month, and a day. So if I go back to TwinSync Studio, we can see that there's we're going from February 2016 to April 2017. So I'm just going to choose something towards the end here, I guess. Here, so let's just do December 12th, 2016. So that's 2016, 12, 12. And that is going to be the time that we set it to. So now if we compile this, go here. And by the way, this is the exact same Blueprint API that you're going to use if you are trying to build like a widget with schedule. I have another tutorial on that, which I may have to update, but it's mostly the same. It goes over some of the math that you would use to convert like between date times and stuff to like, you know, scrub through a, like create a scrubbing timeline, for example. For your model. But here, I'm not going to cover that. We're just going to have this simple Blueprint API usage so you can know a little bit about it. All right, so now I hit play. So in 5 seconds, oh, it's playing twice as fast and my computer's not really happy. Okay. Oh, it paused. No, now it paused. Yeah, there's some Z fighting there. Maybe I'll lower the play rate, but it should just like, yeah, there. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, my computer is not great for this stuff, to be honest. Okay, yeah, let me zoom out so that will be much more visible. And also I'm going to change the play rate. So if I go back to Schedule Manager, I made it twice as fast. I'm going to bring it down. And let's try to, I probably should move the player spawn, but I'm going to try to move out of the way quickly enough. Okay, so we see things are animating. And then in a second, it should pause. Oh, it already did, and I didn't notice. But yeah, so if you notice, it skipped all the other stuff that we saw. It just skipped to the part that to the date that we gave it, and then kept building. So that was really what my logic did. It's already done. I wonder if I should be able to loop it too if I wanted to, but honestly, not really necessary. We sort of covered everything. Okay, yeah. So all of this stuff that I just did in the project, except for well, even using custom materials, you could use those in Unreal without using TwinSync Studio to access the Synchro and iTwin metadata. So it's really the same process once you get to Unreal. The question of whether you want to use the scripting interface for any more advanced like material mapping that uses more advanced iTwin data access, that's up to you. But for now, quick export is totally fine. You still access things the same way. You know, the transparencies on the is working now. So I'm pretty excited to release TwinSync Studio 1.0 and to see what people are doing with it. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, please, there's going to be a video on YouTube, so you can leave comments there. You can also just contact us directly. but I'm working on getting something that people can leave comments on that other people can find, so that way, you know, the same question doesn't get asked twice, or people can vote on like something that they want that's like not implemented or something, just so I know how to prioritize the existing remaining issues. I feel like there aren't actually that many issues left, but there definitely are a couple big ones that sometimes people find. So I'll be working on that stuff. Anyway, again, thank you everybody. And you know, thank you for listening. Good luck out there.